anytime you make a choice, it means that you're leaving another thing behind. And the things that you leave behind when you choose to live a life on the water are not insignificant. And I think you have to be aware that you will be giving up some really important things in order to gain other things. And how important these balances are to you depends entirely on you. No two people are the same, of course. The wonderful thing about sailing is that you can find complete solitude. Also, the terrifying thing about sailing is that you can find complete solitude. I've always considered myself a very solitary person. I can spend hours sitting by myself, reading, writing, or thinking. And so when I was working towards the goal of becoming a long-term sailor, the problem of loneliness never even occurred to me. I looked forward to the solitude. But now, after almost 3 years of pursuing this dream on the other side of the world, I've realized that there's a vast difference between enjoying alone time and actually being alone. Of course, I have Aladino, my partner in life and in sailing, but one person is not a community, and I often find myself missing the ability to talk to friends or family who know me intimately, who have seen me grow up and know my passions and my insecurities. Language barriers and the fact that we're constantly on the move makes it difficult to build new communities, and I find that most of my close relationships now take place online. Yes, the cruising community is absolutely fantastic, and you will meet incredible people, but nonetheless, it doesn't replace people who you've known for decades. The loneliness topic is one that I hear brought up time and time again by long-term cruisers. Here's my recommendations to overcome it. 1. Have your friends and family on board. With the right people, this is perfect, but do be aware that not everyone will adapt to boat life very easily. 2. Go home for part of the year. Many people cruise for half the year, then they go home to work and spend time with family for the other half. Over the long term, this might be a good way to achieve a balance that's right for you. 3. Don't rush. I personally find that slowing down and maybe even spending the winter season in one spot is a really good way to get grounded again and start to build more lasting relationships with locals. 4. Write letters and put them in the post. Texts are fine, but I personally find that writing a handwritten letter makes me feel much more connected to the person I'm writing to. 5. Remember that missing your friends and family is quite normal and healthy, but if it starts to feel unbearable, perhaps the long-term sailing lifestyle simply isn't for you, which is perfectly alright. Perhaps a different kind of alternative lifestyle like a homestead or a tiny house will make you happier in the long run. A sailboat is not always the most forgiving of vehicles. If you hit a rock, you could be in serious trouble. If you neglect maintenance of essential components like your through hulls or your rigging, you could be in danger. If you don't anchor properly and you don't notice when you start dragging in the night, your boat might not float anymore in the morning. I'm not trying to scare you, but just trying to be realistic. You've always got to be alert. When a storm starts blowing, you can't just shut your door and switch on Netflix. Your life is shaped by the waves, the wind, and the coastline, and that can be both intensely beautiful and incredibly stress-inducing. When I first started sailing, I described it as a series of heart attacks interspersed by brief moments of bliss. As I gained more experience, the heart attacks got fewer. But nonetheless, even with experience, sailing demands a certain alertness that can very easily feel like anxiety. It's exhausting to feel like you can never relax. Even when I'm drinking sundowners at anchor in a calm bay, I'm always watching how the wind shifts, looking at the clouds on the horizon and sizing up the distance between us and the other boats in the anchorage. When you're in charge of your own boat, you definitely won't sleep as soundly as you might do on land. And when you combine this kind of constant baseline alertness with other factors like loneliness or poor health, you will have the recipe for some real mental struggles. Here's what I suggest to minimize boat-related worries. 1. Learn as much as you can. Most fear comes from the unknown, and this was definitely true for me. Although the alertness of a sailor doesn't and shouldn't actually go away, the anxiety part of it usually does dissipate once you gain more confidence. I remember our first few nights at anchor, I barely slept at all, even when we were in a super calm bay. Every sound was strange, and I couldn't believe that just a hunk of metal on the sea floor could actually prevent our precious home from hitting the rocks. But now I trust our anchor, I trust our boat, and I sleep far more soundly, albeit with one ear always open. 2. Recognize that this is normal. I think a really big problem I had at the beginning of my sailing career was that I had watched so many videos and read so many books about how magical and spiritual sailing is, so when all I felt was stress and anxiety, I thought I just wasn't cut out to be a sailor. Luckily, I pushed through and I am now totally in love with sailing, but I wish someone had just told me that it's normal and even good to be a bit apprehensive at first. You shouldn't be confident right out the gate. That'll probably just lead you into trouble. Be cautious, take your time, and eventually it'll all become easier. 3. Go into a harbor. If you know you love sailing, but sometimes you just need a mental break to totally relax, go to a harbor. We were never able to afford harbors last year, but after working regular jobs all winter and also slowly building our YouTube channel, we're now able to go into harbors every now and then, and it's made a huge difference. Now, if there's really heavy weather coming and there are no good protected anchorages, we can just go to a harbor and still sleep well that night. A good harbor is safe and calm, and to me it almost feels like staying in a hotel. 4. If you are constantly worried and stressed while on a boat, then it might also be that this lifestyle isn't right for you at the moment. It might be right for you at another time, but sailing is supposed to be something you choose because you love it, not something that constantly stresses you out. Take your time with it and try and find that rhythm that works for you, but if it just never comes, then maybe it's time to move on. Our boat is only 28 feet long. That means that when we do a crossing and we're away from land for a few nights, we can only walk a few feet in any direction. Even if we're at anchor, sometimes we're anchored next to huge cliffs or dense forest, so going to land isn't really an option. So yes, I have been known to get a bit stir-crazy at times. Here's how I usually try to overcome that. 1. Get creative with working out. Sailing requires physical strength, and you've got to keep up your health. Swimming, resistance band workouts, or even using the weights you've got on board will keep you active and boost your mood. 2. Make your boat cozy. You'll be spending a lot of time in a small space. Make it comfortable. 3. Always take the opportunity to go to shore and stretch your legs. Even if you don't feel like it at the time, I promise you won't regret it. For most sailors, and especially younger sailors, the number one concern is money. This question has two sides, having enough money to sail for now, and also having enough money for your future. You might want to buy some land one day, or you might want to have kids and put them through university, or you might want to retire comfortably. I know people who spent their whole lives sailing and are now in retirement with very little savings. I've never met a single person who regretted this decision, but nonetheless, it's something you have to very carefully consider. It's now getting easier to make money as you go by working online. However, it's certainly not easy, and it's also not for everyone. Perhaps you enjoy having coworkers, and perhaps you work best on a fixed schedule. The other option is to save up before you go, and then live off your savings until it's time to return home and work some more. The really important question to ask yourself is, what is important to you? Lasting memories or a comfortable and financially stable life? Although it's possible to have both, especially at the beginning, I would try to decide which one is the most important to you and base your decisions off that. For what it's worth, here's my financial advice. 1. Be honest with yourself. Are you really willing to live frugally? Is a lifestyle of vagabond freedom worth a small bank account? If health problems arise or circumstances change, what is your backup plan? I find that asking myself these questions makes me feel more certain that I've chosen the right lifestyle and that I can deal with anything that comes up. If these questions make you panic, ask yourself why and maybe start small. Go for a month-long sailing trip on someone else's boat to get a feeling for it. Don't rely on YouTube videos to inform your decision. Trust me, as a YouTuber myself, I know that these videos are often just the highlight reels, and even this video only just skims the truth. 2. Start small. Don't buy a big boat, or at least don't buy a boat that's bigger than your budget. And if you buy a fixer-upper, make sure you create a realistic budget for fixing it, and always expect that you'll go over budget. Save enough to sail for one season and then go from there. Don't lock yourself into boats or plans that might land you into really big financial trouble. 3. Make your boat your life. If you're really serious about becoming a cruiser, don't pay a rent or a mortgage. Buy your boat as soon as you can and move on board. If circumstances allow, you can slowly refit it while you keep your regular job. When the refit is done and you've saved a bit, then you can set out to sail. This has the added bonus that you'll already be familiar with living on your boat long term. 4. Do not rely on money that you haven't made yet. I'm not talking about taking out a loan to buy a boat or anything. That kind of decision is totally up to you. I'm talking about setting out to sail and assuming that you'll make YouTube or some other online business work. It's very hard to earn enough to support yourself from online avenues, and you will need to have backups in place. For example, Aladino and I arranged to work in Switzerland for the winter after our first season of sailing. It turns out that during that winter we got really lucky with YouTube and Patreon, but even still, we need to return to work every now and then to make sure we can maintain the boat. Perhaps in the future that will change, but we won't count on that until it happens. Most of the time, living on a boat means freedom, simplicity, and beauty. But it can also mean seasickness, loneliness, and stress. How these elements balance out in your own mind will tell you whether or not you should buy a boat and sail away. And always remember this: no matter how much you love it, no matter how happy you are with your choice, you will probably still feel lonely or anxious at times, and that's just part of being human. There are good days and there are bad days. Living on a sailboat is not a magic solution. It will not make your demons disappear. The boat is there to take you where you want to go, but as cheesy as it may sound, the real journey does happen in your mind. Thank you so much for watching, and an extra big thank you to our patrons for making this and every episode possible. If you'd like to read my weekly secret journal entry, receive surprise letters in the mail, or get the chance to come on board Magic Carpet, please consider becoming a patron. And, as always, a special thank you to these folks who go above and beyond every single week to help us bring these videos to you. Until next time.